This is the Spirit and Wellness Show. News and information from a higher perspective. With your host, Harry Wilkinson. Yes, I am your host, Harry Wilkinson, and welcome once again to the Spirit and Wellness Show. This is the show where we take a look at the days and weeks events, what's going on in the world, what's going on in entertainment, what's going on in the biosphere, the atmosphere, whatever you want to call it, what's going on in what I like to call the hologram that we create of life experience, and we look at it from a higher perspective. We look at it from the point of view of how do we grow from this? What is this we are creating? And how are we growing from this? It's a way to healthfully deal with things that might seem toxic, particularly very volatile situations, very volatile stories, very saddening news, which seems to be what we gravitate towards in our news media. So I want to look at those things, and on today's show we're going to talk about how not to stress about stress. And we're also going to look at some other helpful ways of dealing with the pressures and anxieties of our world. We're going to look at the latest in the news on our fearful displays of spying and secrecy, and our continuing debate about how much is too much, and so on and so forth. But today we're going to start with the breaking news this morning, all about the George Zimmerman case and the murder of a young boy by the name of Trayvon Martin. I'm sure that you haven't been able to get away from hearing about this in some way or another. It's been a very, very big news story, the one that has dominated the entire media spectrum in a way that few stories do. If you think back in recent history, trials like the O.J. trial, and back in the 90s, well, that was the 90s too, but earlier than that, there was the case of I forgot the man's name now. Oh my goodness, that's terrible. But it was a very highly charged racial case in which a man was beaten by police after having been chased, and it was caught on videotape. And the police officers were brought in, put on trial for their actions, and they were still let go. Now, if you remember, after that case, there were very violent repercussions. There were riots, stores were looted, people were hurt. And here in this Trayvon Martin case, the family of the young man, Trayvon Martin, wants very much for that not to happen here. And we hope that that doesn't happen. But the jury has decided that Mr. Zimmerman is not guilty. And they have let him go. He's not guilty on all counts. This is very upsetting for a lot of people, including the family of Trayvon Martin. But it's not the end of this case for this young boy. So let's recap a bit for those who may or may not know exactly what happened. Now, this is all taking place in Florida, and on a Florida evening in February 2012, February 26, I believe it was, George Zimmerman, who was a self-appointed neighborhood watch guard, noticed this young boy, Trayvon, wearing a hoodie and coming out of a 7-Eleven type store. Now, Mr. Zimmerman watched him and, for whatever reasons, felt that this young man was up to no good, that this young man was suspicious. So he called the Sanford Police Department. He called 911. And he got on the phone with the police department and explained to them that he was seeing this young boy coming out of a 7-Eleven. And he was carrying some things, which turned out to be an iced tea and a bag of Skittles. Mr. Zimmerman thought he was suspicious because of what he described as an unnaturally slow and meandering gait. So he called the police and proceeded to follow the teen through this area called Twin Lakes. It's a gated community. This is a place where Trayvon's father lives, and he'd been visiting his father at this place. And Zimmerman lived in this area too. Now what happened was a confrontation ensued. Zimmerman shot Mr. Martin, young Mr. Martin, and he died. That's what happened on February 26th in 2012. Now, as the police released the 911 calls, which were made by the neighbors who were witnessing this, one call featured a voice screaming for help, and then ending in silence as the crack of a gunshot rings out. Now, Mr. Zimmerman, on the phone to the police, was describing this young man, and the police told him specifically not to follow the boy, that he did not need to follow the teen. But he did anyway, and that's how the confrontation occurred. Mr. Zimmerman believed that he was acting in self-defense, and much of that comes from a law in Florida, the state of Florida, and many other states as well have this law, that's known as the Stand Your Ground law. Stand Your Ground law says that if you feel like you are being threatened and that your life is in danger, imminent danger, you may shoot somebody. You may use your gun and kill that person before they kill you. That's the basis of the Stand Your Ground law. So what Mr. Zimmerman claimed was that after he'd followed this boy, that somehow he turned around and was walking back to his car when Martin confronted him, punched him in the face, and knocked him to the ground and smashed his head into the concrete. And the older man then was forced to shoot Trayvon Martin in order to save his own life. That's Mr. Zimmerman's defense. That's what he says. Now, that's not the only story. He had a lot of different stories, but this is the one that they've gone to trial with, or they went to trial with. Now, the biggest problem for this was that after the incident occurred, Mr. Zimmerman was not charged, was not arrested and charged for the murder. I remember that time, certainly, most of you do. It took 44 days and a lot of pressure from a lot of people, including celebrities and regular people like you and me, who protested. But it took 44 days for the Sanford Police Department to arrest this man. But eventually he was arrested, and this has been his trial. And there's been a lot of speculation, a lot of coverage of the trial. I won't go into all of it. I'm sure that you've had enough of it. But suffice it to say that apparently the jury has decided that the evidence wasn't strong enough to convict Mr. Zimmerman. And as difficult as that may be for people who feel that he has done something egregious, mainly murder an unarmed boy, that can be difficult. But this is the system that we have created. This is the system that we used to help us when we make decisions about what happens to a person's life. And as I say, as difficult as it may be for those who think that justice has not been served, I think that the jury is right to err on the side of extreme caution before you send a man or woman to prison, before you take away someone's freedom. That is a huge, huge thing. And this is not to say that Mr. Zimmerman is innocent. This is not to say that what he did was right. It's simply to say that in cases that are confusing like this, where there is no absolute proof about what actually happened, it's very hard to make a determination to send someone to prison who may or may not have just been defending themselves. These kinds of things occur too because, again, evidence has to be so strong in order to convict someone that and this is the way the system works, and it's the way the system should work. In any case, now there's more that needs to be done. Now, the family of Trayvon Martin, with help from many high-profile people, will be taking this to the Department of Justice to look into what they are calling civil rights abuses. The Department of Justice in the state of Florida, particularly. And it all has to do with this stand your ground law. And the fact that, as the family of Trayvon Martin is saying, that this young boy lost his life for no good reason. He was unarmed and didn't appear to be doing anything except walking in a strange way. Although Mr. Zimmerman does claim that he was attacked, we don't know for sure that that's what happened. What we do know is that a boy is dead due to the enormous level of fear that exists between people. This is all a result of fear. fear on Trayvon's side. If Trayvon did try to defend himself or did go after Zimmerman, a man who was following him with a gun and with what would appear to be not good intention, he was acting out of fear for himself and his life. Mr. Zimmerman was acting out of fear that his neighborhood was under attack due to many robberies that had taken place. And he believed that Trayvon was one of those groups of people who had been doing this. He used some very strong language in describing the boy and calling him an a-hole and whatnot. So what they're going to be doing with the Department of Justice case is they're going to try to make a case that Mr. Zimmerman racially profiled this young man and had hatred in mind when he went after him. They are going to try him, or they're going to at least try to try him on hate crime charges. So there's a lot more of this to come. But just in the context of this show and what we do on this show, how we look at things from a higher perspective, as I say, we create these high-profile situations, these dramas, if you will, and we sort of form a link of consciousness around them for a time, thanks to the media. And we create them for a very, very good reason. We create them because these are aspects of ourselves that we are throwing into the mix, that we are trying to work out. The desire to protect yourself and those you love and those around you, and the desire to not be profiled, to not be attacked or thought to be guilty of crimes simply because of your skin color. These are all issues, very important issues, that we are grappling with, and the only time that we have an opportunity to work through them is through these high-profile cases. So, if you think of it in this way, that Mr. Zimmerman and young Mr. Martin represent aspects of ourselves. Aspects of ourselves that are in conflict, if you will. And it all has to do with fear. And when we understand that fear means false evidence appearing real, we know a lot about what's going on. Fear, as I said, was the underlying factor in all of this. So this case helps us to look at our own fears. What fears do we have? How do we respond to those fears? How do we deal with those fears? Do we attack and create more fear? Or do we use wisdom and patience and compassion? How do we deal with our fear? That, to me, may be the most important thing about this case. The most important thing that we are trying to tell ourselves about this case. All right, then. I think it's time to move on. We'll, I'm sure, have more opportunity to talk about the Zimmerman case as more things come to light and more things happen. But right now, I want to talk about stress. Because another factor that is fear-based that causes many things to happen is stress. And we're concerned about stress as everyday worries weigh upon us, as our work and family lives impact us. We want to know how do we mediate stress? How do we keep stress from our lives, and how do we cope with it when we do have it? So we have some new research data about stress, and this research was done in Great Britain by a French team of researchers, and they collected some data over a period of years since 1985, apparently, on more than 7,000 adults in Britain. They were apparently civil servants based in London. And they were asked if they felt that stress had affected their health. Now, they also got information about their habits: smoking, drinking, diet, physical activity, what their blood pressure was, diabetes, their weight, were they married, what sex were they, what age, socioeconomic status, ethnicity. So after 18 years of this study, 352 of the participants had had heart attacks or died as a result of a heart attack. And after analyzing the data, the researchers found that the study participants who felt that stress was significantly affecting their health had double the risk of heart attacks as those who said stress had no effect on their health. Even when the data was adjusted for other risk factors, the additional heart attack risk was still 49% higher compared to study participants who didn't feel that stress was affecting their health. So this study was published just last month in June, and it tells us a lot about our state of mind and what it can do to us. Stress can cause all kinds of things, including cardiovascular disease, cancer, other illnesses, but it can also lead to things like accidents. Because if you're very stressed out, you can easily have an accident. And in some cases, if it's overwhelming, it can lead to suicide. I think the important thing here, and Dr. Andrew Weil, who we often quote on this show and look to for advice, seems to sort of echo this. When you know that stress is manageable, and then in fact a certain level of stress is good, and overstress can be released through practices we talk about on this show all the time: yoga, meditation, breathing exercises. Those sorts of things manage stress very efficiently. So once we understand that stress can't hurt us if we don't let it, that you can control your stress, you can minimize its impact through the things you eat, the things you do, through breath work and meditation and all of those things. You can learn to laugh. You can laugh at your stress. You can laugh at your stressors. You can take a step back and look at things, as we do on this show, from a higher perspective. And it's very important that we do that, because if we don't, it can lead to very serious health problems and other repercussions. I mean, look at the Trayvon Martin case. If that's not a result of stress out of control, I don't know what is. So, relax, my friends, and don't stress, overstress. You'll have it, you'll deal with it, it can be handled. Alrighty, so, along those same lines, let's take a look at some tricks we might use in getting to that stress-free zone. So we have an article here. This is coming from the Huffington Post, from their blogger, Miss Jen Groover. Jen Groover, she's a motivational speaker, and she has some interesting takes on how to be an empowered person, to take control of your life. She has 7 habits for living an empowered life. The first one, she says, is to be more mindful. Mindfulness, and we've talked about mindfulness meditation too, and the research on it that is showing that once you become mindful, you expand your awareness. And she says the solid foundation of change, growth, and evolution begins with a commitment to being more mindful, paying attention to how your every thought causes actions and reactions. You can effectively evaluate which behaviors are serving you well and which are damaging and holding you back from the results you truly desire to create. Mindfulness means becoming aware of every word you choose and the outcome it can create. It's being as thoughtful as you can about who you hang out with, how they affect your energy and sense of self, what you watch on TV, how you read, and your perception of the world. That's what we talk about on this show. You can change your perception of these things. But the first step in doing that is to recognize how they're making you feel to begin with, or how you are reacting to them. And then once you're aware of that, you can change that. Be more forgiving. That's number 2. That frees you. It's not about the person that you're forgiving. It frees you. So you're no longer bound to whatever happened, whatever the situation is that is keeping you locked in a state of unforgiveness. That affects your health. And if it affects your health, you need to get rid of it. Number 3, she says, have complaint-free days. And that's an interesting tip. If you're complaining without having an idea of what you want to do about something, that can lead to negativity. A lot of people do just complain for no reason. Number 4 is gratitude. Be grateful for everything that's in your life, whether it's been judged good or bad. You can find how it is meaningful to you. Inspire and empower others if you can. That's what I try to do on this show and other things. Set out to be constantly compassionate. That's a good one. I don't know if that's possible, but we can give it a good try, right? Yeah. And finally, smile more. Sounds kind of simplistic, I know, but just the act of smiling itself changes your face, changes your biochemistry as well, and it impacts how you feel about yourself, and that impacts what you project to the world. So, some interesting advice from this young woman on the Huffington Post. You can find it in today's online version at HuffingtonPost.com if you want to read more about it. But for now, I will say farewell until 2 weeks from today. I will be away next week, so our show will not be airing next Sunday, but I will be back the following Sunday, the 28th, for more good stuff. Have a good one.